Nobody came to save you. Good. Because the man who waits to be saved is already defeated. Look around you. The people who said they'd be there, where are they now? Gone. Busy. Comfortable. Living their mediocre lives while you're sitting here, at the edge of something either great or forgotten. Here's what they never told you. Isolation is not a punishment. It is a selection process. Machiavelli didn't write The Prince surrounded by allies. He wrote it in exile, stripped of power, abandoned by the very state he served. And out of that silence, out of that brutal, unforgiving aloneness, came one of the most powerful manuscripts the world has ever read. Your emptiness is not a wound. It is a workshop when there's no one to distract you, no one to validate you, no one to slow you down with their doubt and their fear. You are finally free. Free to build without permission. Free to move without explanation. Free to become something no one around you has the vocabulary to describe. Most men collapse under silence. A few, the rare, dangerous few, people, listen to it. That silence is speaking to you right now. The man who learns to thrive alone can never be controlled by anyone. That is the first law of self-made power. Drop "I build in silence" in the comments. Let me know you're building alone and unbothered. Number 2. The ruthless audit. Before you build an empire, you must burn what is weak. And I'm not talking about your enemies, I'm talking about you, the version of you that makes excuses. The version that checks his phone, hoping someone noticed him. The version that shrinks in rooms where he should be commanding attention. That version has to die tonight. This is not motivation. This is surgery. Machiavelli understood something that most men spend their entire lives running from. You cannot build power on a foundation of self-deception. You must look at yourself with cold, unflinching eyes and ask the question that terrifies most people. What am I, really? Not what you wish you were. Not the story you tell at dinner. Not the highlight reel you post online. What are you when no one is watching? What are you when the pressure comes and the room goes quiet and every excuse you've ever made lines up in front of you like soldiers waiting for orders? That is the real you. And until you face that man, truly face him, you will keep repeating the same cycles, attracting the same failures, wondering why nothing ever changes. Here is the ruthless audit. Write down your 3 biggest weaknesses. Not the ones that sound humble and strategic in a job interview. The real ones. The patterns. The addictions. The moments of cowardice you've never admitted out loud. Because a weakness you refuse to name is a weapon someone else will eventually use against you. Machiavelli said it plainly. A prince who is not wise himself cannot be well advised. Wisdom begins with self-knowledge. Brutal, uncomfortable, ego-destroying self-knowledge. The men who dominate life are not the most talented. They are the most honest with themselves. They cut their losses faster. They correct their course without drama. They do not fall in love with who they were. They are obsessed with who they are becoming. Strip yourself down. Audit everything. Rebuild from truth, not fantasy. That is where real power is forged. Comment "I face myself first" below. Because self-mastery before world mastery always. Number 3. Silence is your greatest weapon. Most men cannot shut up. And that silence, that inability to hold their tongue, to guard their moves, to protect their vision, is exactly why they stay average their entire lives. They announce their goals and receive applause instead of results. They share their plans and invite sabotage from people who smile to their face and pray for their failure behind closed doors. Machiavelli warned us centuries ago. Men are so simple and so ready to obey present necessities that one who deceives will always find those who allow themselves to be deceived. In other words, the world is full of people waiting to exploit your openness. So stop being open. Not with everyone. Not anymore. Silence is not weakness. Silence is strategy. When you stop explaining yourself, something powerful happens. People cannot prepare for a man they cannot read. They cannot counter a move they never saw coming. They cannot diminish a vision they were never allowed to witness in its vulnerable, unfinished state. Your dreams are seeds. And seeds do not grow by being broadcast. They grow in the dark, in silence, beneath the surface, where no careless hand can uproot them before they take hold. Think about the most dangerous chess player you've ever watched. He doesn't announce his next move. He doesn't ask for opinions on his strategy. He sits, he studies, he calculates, and then he acts with terrifying precision. That is the energy you must carry into every room, every relationship, every opportunity. Let your results be the loudest thing about you. Let your silence make people uncomfortable. Let them wonder what you're doing, what you're planning, what you're building. That uncertainty, that mystery, is a form of power most men never learn to wield because they are too desperate for validation to stay quiet long enough to earn it. Validation is a drug, and like all drugs, it feels good in the moment and costs you everything in the long run. Detox from the need to be understood. Move in silence. Strike with precision. Let the world catch up to you. Drop "my silence is my strategy" in the comments, because the most dangerous men are the ones you never see coming. Number 4. Master your emotions or they will master you. Here is a truth so sharp it will cut you if you're not ready for it. Every single time you have lost, in business, in relationships, in life, trace it back far enough and you will find one common thread. You let your emotions make a decision that your logic should have owned. You reacted when you should have calculated. You exploded when you should have observed. You begged when you should have walked away. You trusted when every signal in the room was telling you to guard yourself. Emotion without discipline is not passion. It is a liability. And in the game of power, a liability is not something to be managed. It is something to be eliminated. Machiavelli understood this at a level most people are too comfortable to confront. He wrote that a ruler must know how to use both the beast and the man within him. The beast for force, the man for reason. But here is what most people miss. The beast must be leashed, not killed, leashed. Because a man with no emotion is hollow, but a man ruled by his emotion is dangerous to himself and useful to everyone around him. Your anger tells your enemies exactly where to push. Your neediness tells manipulators exactly what to offer. Your fear tells the world exactly where your ceiling is. When you wear your emotions on your face, on your tongue, on your timeline, you hand people a map to your destruction and then act surprised when they use it. The Stoics knew this. Marcus Aurelius sat at the head of the most powerful empire the world had ever seen, facing betrayal, plague, war, and personal loss. And he chose, deliberately and repeatedly, to respond rather than react. That word respond is everything. A reaction is automatic, unconscious, predictable. A response is chosen, measured, strategic. The man who can pause between stimulus and response owns something most men will never possess: control. And control is the foundation of all power. So how do you build this? You start by studying yourself in pressure. Next time someone disrespects you, don't react. Observe yourself wanting to react. Next time a deal falls through, don't spiral. Sit in the discomfort and ask what information this failure is carrying. Next time someone tries to provoke you, smile. Not because you're weak, but because you understand that composure in chaos is one of the most rarest and most intimidating qualities a man can project. They wanted a reaction. You gave them nothing. And nothing, in the language of power, says everything. Train your mind like a weapon. Discipline your emotions like a soldier. Because the man who masters himself first will find that mastering the world around him becomes almost inevitable. Comment. I respond. I never react below. Because emotional mastery is where boys end and kings begin. Number 5. Build your mind into a fortress. Listen to me carefully. Everything you will ever build in the external world, the wealth, the influence, the respect, the legacy, every single brick of it will first be constructed inside your mind. Before the empire, there is the idea. Before the idea, there is the mind capable of holding it. And most men never get past this stage. Not because they lack opportunity, not because the world is against them, but because their mind is a battlefield they have never bothered to conquer. They consume without intention, they think without direction, they absorb every opinion, every headline, every piece of noise that the modern world throws at them. And they call it being informed. They are not informed, they are infected. Machiavelli was a student of history before he was a master of power. He read voraciously. He studied the rise and fall of empires, the psychology of rulers, the patterns of human behavior, not for entertainment, but for ammunition. He understood that a mind stocked with knowledge, sharpened by reflection, and disciplined by solitude, is the most lethal instrument a man can possess. And yet here we are in an age where the average man spends hours every day feeding his mind with content that makes him passive, distracted, emotionally volatile, and intellectually soft. You are what you consume. Read that again. You are what you consume. If you fill your mind with noise, you will think in noise. If you fill your mind with fear, you will make decisions from fear. If you fill your mind with the achievements, philosophies, and strategies of the greatest men who ever lived, you will begin to think at a level that separates you from almost everyone around you. This is not arrogance. This is architecture. Building your mind is the most important construction project of your life, and it demands the same discipline, the same intentionality, and the same ruthless quality control you would apply to anything you truly valued. So here is what you must do. You must become obsessive about your inputs. Guard what enters your mind the way a general guards the gates of a city. Not everything deserves entry. Not every opinion deserves your attention. Not every voice deserves a seat at the table of your thoughts. Cut the noise. Read the books that make you uncomfortable. Study the men who built something from nothing. Sit in silence long enough to hear your own thinking clearly. Meditate not as a spiritual exercise, but as a tactical one. Because a mind that can be still under pressure is a mind that can operate with clarity when everything around it is chaos. And then write. Write your thoughts, your strategies, your observations about human behavior. Writing forces your mind to organize itself. It transforms vague anxiety into concrete understanding. It turns scattered emotion into directed power. The men who journal are not soft, they are precise. They are building a relationship with their own mind that most people never develop. Because here is the final truth of this section. Your mind is either your greatest asset or your greatest prison. There is no middle ground. Every day you either sharpen it or you dull it. Every choice you make about what to read, what to watch, what to think about, what to dwell on, is either building your fortress or eroding your foundation. Choose with the cold precision of a man who understands that his thoughts today are the architecture of his reality tomorrow. Fortify your mind. Protect it. Feed it with purpose, and watch how the world begins to bend toward a man who thinks at a level it has never encountered before. Drop "My mind is my fortress" in the comments right now, because the strongest walls ever built were never made of stone. 6. Use solitude as a strategic advantage. The world will try to convince you that being alone is something to be fixed. They will push relationships on you, social obligations, gatherings, group chats, and constant connectivity. And they will label any man who steps back from all of it as broken, antisocial, or lost. Do not believe them, not for a single second. Because what they are really afraid of is a man who has discovered what solitude actually produces. And they are afraid because they have never had the discipline to sit inside it long enough to find out. Solitude is not loneliness. Understand that distinction with every fiber of your being. Loneliness is a wound. It is the pain of wanting connection and being denied it. Solitude is a choice. It is the deliberate withdrawal from the noise of the world in order to hear the signal of your own purpose with absolute clarity. Every great man in history who built something worth remembering understood this. Newton developed his theory of gravity during a plague quarantine, completely isolated from the academic world. Darwin spent decades in near solitude, developing a theory that would permanently alter how humanity understood itself. Machiavelli, exiled and stripped of everything, retreated into his study every evening, changed into formal robes as a mark of respect for the great minds he was about to commune with through their books, and emerged with ideas that still shape political philosophy 5 centuries later. These men did not succeed despite their solitude. They succeeded because of it. Solitude gave them something the crowd never could: uninterrupted access to their own genius. And you have that same capacity, every man does. But most men are too afraid of what they will find when the distractions are removed and they are left alone with themselves. Because in solitude there are no performances. There is no audience to impress, no role to play, no mask to maintain. There is only you, your truest thoughts, your deepest fears, your most honest assessment of where you are and where you are going. And for a man who has been running from himself, that kind of honesty is terrifying. But for a man who is ready, truly ready, it is the most liberating experience available to a human being. So here is how you weaponize your solitude. You schedule it with the same seriousness you would schedule a meeting with the most important person in your life. Because that is exactly what it is. You use it to think, not scroll, not consume, not distract, but to genuinely think about your life, your direction, your decisions, and your character. You use it to plan with the cold precision of a strategist who knows that every hour spent in focused solitude compounds into weeks and months of accelerated clarity that the distracted man will never catch up to. You use it to recover, not from tiredness but from the constant performance of existing in social spaces where you must manage perceptions and navigate agendas. Let solitude restore the version of you that is unfiltered, unhurried, and completely aligned with your own vision. Because the man who is deeply comfortable alone is a man who can never be manipulated through the fear of isolation. He cannot be threatened with abandonment. He cannot be controlled through the withdrawal of company or validation. He is complete within himself. And a complete man, a man who needs nothing from you emotionally, is one of the most powerful and unnerving forces another person can encounter. Build that completeness. Embrace the silence. Use every moment alone, not as time to endure, but as territory to conquer. Because while everyone else is drowning in noise and company, and the endless need to be seen, you will be in the quiet, building something they cannot yet imagine. Comment: solitude is my superpower below. Because the man who masters being alone masters everything. Number 7. Trust no one. Depend on no one. Owe nothing to anyone. This is the part where people get uncomfortable. This is where the soft voices in your head, the ones that are not going to be taken away. And when you are in the world, you are in the world. As conditioned by years of being told that vulnerability is strength, and that you should open up and let people in, start pushing back against what I'm about to say. Let them push. Because what I am about to tell you is not cynicism. It is not bitterness. It is not the philosophy of a broken man who was betrayed one too many times and decided to close his heart to the world. It is strategy. Cold, clear, battle-tested strategy. Drawn from the observation of human nature at its most honest and most ruthless. Machiavelli wrote that men will always betray you for self-interest when the stakes are high enough. Not some men. Not bad men. Not men of weak character. Men. Human beings. Because at the deepest level, every person on this earth is operating from a survival mechanism that prioritizes their own interests above yours. And any relationship, any alliance, any friendship that has not been tested under real pressure is nothing more than a comfortable agreement between two people who haven't yet been forced to choose. And when the choice comes, and it always comes, most people will choose themselves. That is not evil. That is nature. And a man who understands nature does not rage against it. He accounts for it. He builds his life accordingly. This does not mean you become heartless. It does not mean you refuse connection or treat every person around you as an enemy waiting to reveal themselves. What it means is that you never, not once, not ever, build the foundation of your security, your progress, your self-worth, or your peace of mind on another human being. You never make yourself so dependent on someone's presence, approval, loyalty, or support that their absence has the power to dismantle you. Because the moment you do, you have handed them power over your life that no one should ever possess. Your income must depend on your skills, your discipline, and your strategy. Not on the goodwill of an employer, a partner, or a single client who could disappear tomorrow. Your confidence must be generated from within. From your track record, your standards, your self-knowledge. Not borrowed from the compliments of people whose opinions shift with the wind. Your peace must be self-constructed, built from your values, your philosophy, your daily disciplines. Not contingent on whether certain people are present in your life or behaving in ways that you approve of. This is what it means to be truly self-made. Not just financially, psychologically, structurally. To be a man whose entire architecture is internal, whose foundation cannot be touched by the betrayal, the departure, or the disappointment of another human being because it was never built on them to begin with. Observe people carefully, study their patterns, their incentives, their behavior under pressure. Appreciate what they contribute, enjoy what they offer. But never confuse appreciation with dependency, never mistake loyalty for permanence, and never, under any circumstances, reveal the full depth of your plans, your fears, your finances, or your vulnerabilities to anyone who has not been forged in fire beside you over years. Not weeks, not months, years. Trust is not given. It is earned through time, tested through adversity, and even then held loosely. Because the man who depends on no one is the man who can never be brought to his knees by anyone. Drop "I am my own foundation" in the comments, because the only person guaranteed to never leave you is the man you see in the mirror. Number 8. The art of strategic patience. Here is something that will separate you from 90% of the men trying to build something meaningful with their lives. Not talent. Not intelligence. Not even discipline. Though discipline matters enormously. The thing that will truly separate you is your ability to wait. Deliberately. Strategically. Without panic. Without the desperate, frantic energy of a man who measures his progress against the timelines of people he follows on the internet and concludes that because his results are not visible yet, they are not coming. That conclusion has killed more potential than laziness ever has. Because laziness is obvious, a man can feel it and correct it, but impatience disguises itself as urgency, as ambition, as the reasonable concern of a man who simply wants to see results for his efforts. And in that disguise, it convinces brilliant, capable, hard-working men to abandon strategies before they mature, to switch directions before momentum builds, to burn down what they've planted, because the harvest hasn't arrived on the schedule their ego demanded. Machiavelli understood that timing is everything in the exercise of power. He wrote extensively about the concept of fortuna, fortune, fate, circumstance, and how the wise man does not fight the river but learns to read it, to move with it, to position himself at the bend where the current will eventually carry everything he needs directly to him. This is not passivity. Let me be absolutely clear about that. Strategic patience is not sitting still and hoping. It is not the philosophy of a man who is afraid to act and dresses his cowardice in the language of wisdom. Strategic patience is the discipline of a man who acts correctly and consistently, while resisting the psychological pressure to measure those correct actions against a timeline that his ego, not his strategy, invented. It is the farmer who plants in spring, tends through summer, and does not dig up his seeds in June because they haven't broken the surface yet. It is the chess grandmaster who builds his position quietly, piece by piece, move by move, resisting the temptation of the flashy, aggressive play that would feel good now but compromise the endgame. It is the businessman who builds his skills, his network, his reputation, and his savings in silence for years before the world sees anything, and then appears to have succeeded overnight to everyone who wasn't watching closely. That phrase, overnight success, is one of the greatest lies the modern world. There are no overnight successes. There are only men who did the work in the dark for so long that by the time the light came on, the people who hadn't been paying attention were shocked by what had already been built. You must make peace with the dark. You must become comfortable operating in the space between effort and reward. That brutal, unglamorous, often lonely corridor where most men give up because there is no applause, no validation, no visible evidence that what they are doing is working. That corridor is where character is built. That corridor is where the weak separate from the strong. That corridor is where your competition quits and your consistency becomes your greatest competitive advantage. So when the doubt comes, and it will come, at 3 in the morning, in the middle of a losing streak, in the silence after a failure that shook your confidence, you do not abandon the strategy. You audit it, you refine it, you improve your execution of it. But you do not quit, because the timeline didn't match your impatience. You stay, you work. You trust the compounding nature of disciplined effort applied consistently over time. Because the man who can outlast his own doubt, outwork his own fear, and outwait his own impatience will eventually arrive at a position of power that the restless, reactive, instant gratification generation around him will never be able to reach, simply because they couldn't stay in the game long enough to win it. Patience is not waiting. Patience is working without needing to see the finish line to know you are moving toward it. Comment: I play the long game below, because empires are not built in a day and kings are not crowned in a hurry. Number 9. Reinvent yourself with zero apology. There will come a moment, and if it hasn't come yet, it is coming, where you will look at the life you have been living, the version of yourself you have been presenting to the world, the relationships you have been maintaining, the habits you have been tolerating, and something deep and unignorable inside you will say, "This is not it. This is not who I am. This is not what I came here to build. This is not the life I am willing to settle for." And in that moment, you will face one of the most defining choices a man can encounter. You can silence that voice, suppress it with distraction, with comfort, with the slow anesthetic of routine, and continue being who everyone around you has decided you are. Or you can listen to it and begin the most important, most uncomfortable, most liberating process available to a human being: reinvention. Not the soft, aesthetic kind that gets posted online with a motivational caption and forgotten by next month. The real kind. The kind that requires you to bury a version of yourself that people knew, that people depended on, that people were comfortable with, and emerge as something they don't immediately recognize. Something sharper, something colder, something more aligned with the man you were always capable of being before the world talked you into being smaller. Machiavelli understood that the most powerful men in history were not those who remained consistent with their past. They were those who had the audacity to transform without seeking permission from anyone who knew them before the transformation began. He studied princes who reinvented their entire political identity overnight, generals who rewrote their military strategy mid-campaign, leaders who shed the skin of who they had been with the complete ruthlessness of a man who understands that survival and elevation demand evolution. And yet here's what stops most men from doing this. Not lack of vision, not lack of courage. People. The people around them who have built their own comfort on the predictability of who that man has always been. Friends who subtly discourage growth because your evolution makes their stagnation visible. Family who mistake your transformation for betrayal because change disrupts the role they assigned you years ago. Associates who call your new standards arrogance because your elevation exposes the ceiling they have quietly accepted for themselves. These people will not celebrate your reinvention. They will pathologize it. They will question it. They will remind you of who you used to be, as though the past is a prison you are obligated to remain in out of loyalty to their comfort. You owe them nothing. Let me say that again with absolute clarity. You owe your past self nothing except the lesson. You owe the people who are comfortable with your limitations nothing except the example of what is possible when a man decides to refuse them. Reinvention is not betrayal. It is responsibility. The highest responsibility a man has is not to the expectations others have deposited onto him over years of familiarity. It is to the fullest, most powerful, most realized version of himself that is possible given the time and the life he has been granted. So reinvent yourself without apology. Change your circle without explanation. Raise your standards without softening the blow for people who benefited from you having lower ones. Develop new philosophies, new disciplines, new aesthetics, new ambitions, and do not package them in the language of justification for an audience that was never going to understand anyway. Walk into the next chapter of your life the way Machiavelli's prince walked into power, decisively, strategically, and with the complete understanding that transformation at the highest level is always a solitary act performed by a man who has finally chosen himself above the comfort of everyone else's perception. You are not who you were, you are not even fully who you are becoming, but you are moving. And a man in deliberate motion toward his own greatness is one of the most unstoppable forces this world will ever encounter. Drop "I am under construction" and "unstoppable" in the comments, because the most dangerous version of you is the one still being built. Number 10. The self-made man has no equals. We have arrived. This is the final law. The one that everything before it has been building toward. The one that will either land in you like a blade finding its mark, or pass over you like every other piece of content you have consumed and forgotten by tomorrow. So I need you to be present for this. Completely. Because what I am about to tell you is not a motivational conclusion. It is not a warm send-off designed to make you feel good as you close this video and return to the same life unchanged. It is a coronation, but only for the man who has actually absorbed what came before it, who has embraced his solitude, audited himself with ruthless honesty, mastered his emotions, fortified his mind, weaponized his patience, and chosen reinvention over the comfort of stagnation. For that man, and only that man, what follows is true. The self-made man has no equals, not because he is superior to other human beings in some abstract, arrogant sense, but because he has done something that the overwhelming majority of people on this earth will never do. He has taken full, unconditional, unshared ownership of his life. No excuses, no blame, no waiting for conditions to improve, for people to change, for the world to become more fair, or more kind, or more accommodating of his particular circumstances. He looked at everything that was against him: the loneliness, the lack of resources, the absence of mentors, the weight of his past, the silence where support should have been. And he said, "Good." Because every obstacle that did not destroy him became material. Every betrayal became clarity. Every failure became data. Every silent, unglamorous, unrewarded hour of work became a brick in a foundation that no external force had any part in building, and therefore no external force has any power to dismantle. This is the Machiavellian truth that the modern world is too soft to teach you. Power that is given can be taken. Influence that is inherited can be stripped. Success that is built on the foundation of other people's support is always at some level hostage to the continuation of that support. But the man who built himself, who dragged his own potential out of silence and solitude and suffering, and shaped it with nothing but discipline and vision, and an absolute refusal to quit, that man owns something permanent. He owns himself completely. And a man who owns himself completely is untouchable. Not because the world stops trying to reach him, but because there is nothing left to threaten him with. You came into this alone. You will leave alone. And in between, in that brief, electric, unrepeatable window of time you have been given, you have a choice to need the world or to build one. That choice is yours. It has always been yours. Make it like a king. Drop "I am self-made and untouchable" in the comments right now. Let the world know a king just finished his blueprint. If this monologue reached something inside you, if even one section cracked you open and showed you something true, then you already know what to do. Hit that like button, subscribe to Machiavellian Mind, and turn on notifications, because what is coming next will go even deeper. The blueprint doesn't end here, it evolves, and so will you.